right. Good morning, wherever you are calling or dialing in from, however you say this. So, I'm Brian Sanders. Welcome to our webinar. And here in a moment, you'll see my co-host join us as well when they get their video up and running. And today's webinar is all about all things drones. So this is really just an open forum for us to talk about, sit down, discuss. If you've got your coffee, or maybe you're drinking something more exciting than that. I don't know. Could be, depending on what time it is for you. But anyway, just glad to have you here. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, so our host today is myself, Brian Sanders. And then I also have Joy Sanders, who's in charge of our training and services aspects of our company. So FAA services, etc. I also have Simon Aslan with us too. Simon, can you say hi real quick?
How you doing, guys? Good to see you.
Cool.
Glad to be on again this week.
You just saw, but Simon was the one talking. I think you guys have a little feedback there at the office. Anyway, we also have Kelly Newbecker on with us as well, which is our FAA consultant. So Kelly can speak to anything about regulations or questions that you might have about that aspect here in the U.S. So welcome. A couple things. Let me just see what we've got going so far. So one of the, and someone already figured it out. So the way we want you to ask questions is at the bottom of your screen. This could be if you're on Zoom for mobile or on an actual desktop device. You'll see a little thing that says Q&A. And how this works, if you haven't joined one of our webinars before, is you'll click on that, you'll type in whatever question that you want us to talk about today. And then what will happen is we might be able to respond live. That's our goal. If we address your question live, when we start talking about your question, you'll get a little notification that says, we're about to talk about your question. And then if we respond by text, like a response to that question, then you'll get it back in your inbox as an answer to question. Now, once your question gets answered, then it becomes visible to everyone attending the webinar with us today. And what we might do to kind of mix it up and make things a little more engaging and fun is we might give you a chance to actually jump on video conversation with you. So if you're open to that, if you're willing for that, just make sure you include that in the question, like, yes, I'm okay with my video being on. You got to make sure you have like a shirt on and all that stuff, okay? All right, great. So let's get started. I'm going to swing around a couple different things so you can see all of us at the same time. So you have to just look at my ugly mug the whole time. All right, so let's see. It looks like we've got Kelly on. She's listening. She doesn't have a camera on that device, so she's just going to have that little gray screen that you see. Can you guys believe my hair? Look at these curls.
There's a barbershop closed in Seattle.
I was trying to be crazy. Okay, we're working it out. All right, cool. So first question. Let's just start right in. So this is from Christian, and it says, let me move it up here. All right, it says, hello, would like to know a little over the special, maybe a little about the special considerations for applying products over rice fields. Any trouble with water in the fields on affecting the sensors when flying over it? Also, what about the number of hectares applied per day? Awesome, awesome question. And then he goes on to say, let me see if this is relative. It's kind of relative. So we'll just bring this second question that he's asking in as well. That says, what do you think about, or what do you think on RTK with applications of vegetable crops? Are they needed? Like, is RTK needed? Or do you only recommend them on slopes or different terrains? Such good questions. Simon, you want to grab those?
Sure.
Cool.
So as far as special considerations for applying product over rice fields, interesting question. So most of the drones that we offer were originally developed for rice farming. So some of our models have waterproofing or water resistant features. So the water isn't really a big problem. As far as the sensors being affected, some of the sensors are affected, specifically the terrain following sensor. In some cases, water can affect it. However, it can be used, that's what it's designed for. It is designed to be used in what's the word, like latticed fields or step operations. But in a lot of cases where there's water, you don't really have changes in terrain. It's flat. So we're able to turn our terrain sensors off and avoid any kind of issues with that. As far as numbers hectares applied per day, well, that's really going to depend on a lot of different factors. Number one, size of the aircraft in which you use, and two, the application rate at which you apply. Some of our aircraft are able to do up to 40 acres per day. What is that? Almost 15 hectares divided by 2.2. You can find all our specs to our specific aircraft on our website. If you go to any of our aircraft information, you click on specifications, it has all that information there. But you can expect to cover quite a bit of area every day with our aircraft. Let's see. Do you want to add anything to that, Brian, specific to that question?
I would just add some of, there's a lot of factors that go into application or to actually coverage rate, right? Like, and also I want to just pause real quick. I'm getting some messages that that our video is a little choppy. So I think it's a Zoom issue. I know I've got a hardwire connection, but I'm getting little things that come up and say my connection's unstable. So just bear with us that you're seeing that as well. Yeah, cool. So let me just go. While I'm answering this, make sure, for everyone attending, if you have questions, go ahead and submit them now in that Q&A so that we can get to those next. So back to that, Simon, there's a lot that goes into the coverage rates, right? How much area, whether it be acres or hectares, we could use acres in this example, that you can cover. Namely the aircraft itself. And the aircraft matters because it has different pumps on it, right? Higher flow rate pumps allow me to cover more area at one time. The other important factor is the swath. Now, some of our older models actually have lower flow rate pumps, okay, but also wider swaths. So what we are seeing in the new M6e X2, which is our little 10 liter, and the new G200 is they have higher flow rates, okay, and not as wide of a swath as some of our really large older models, like the 20 liter and the 15 liter. But with that higher application rate, the higher flow rate, you're actually able to fly the aircraft faster, which gives you more efficiency, more coverage. Of course, changing the nozzles, right? So if you're in an application that drift mitigation is important, you're gonna have a larger nozzle, which means you're actually gonna have a narrower swath. So all those things go into the formula. I did some calculations for a prospective customer in the Philippines the other day, and they were looking at applying, Christian, I'm going to see if I can speak your language, in the conversion, right? And I'm in the States, so of course it's all different for me, but it was 25 liters per hectare, okay? And it looked like they could do 1 hectare in about 10 minutes. So that gives you an idea, that high of an application rate, and that was on the G200, the new 16 liter. With that high of an application rate, that they were able to cover that amount of area in about 10 minutes. So hope that helps to answer your question, okay? All right, cool. Let's pop into a question here from Andy. So this says, hi, Brian, Andy, and hi, Andy, hello. It's great to have you on here, man. What is the FAA spraying exemption, and what other FAA rules apply for ag drones? Great question. Joy, do you want to jump on that? And then you and Kelly can kind of bounce around a little bit. Oh, Joy's muted. Please hold. I think I'm unmuting her while she's muting herself again, or vice versa.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
All right, thanks. Yes, I've got answers. Okay, so it depends on your operations. If you're going to be spraying under 55 pounds, then it's like a Part 107 waiver to be able to dispense, carry hazardous materials. You'll still also have to get your 137 certificate, which is your agricultural aircraft operator certificate. And if you're operating over 55 pounds and spraying, then you get an exemption, and Kelly's probably going to have to correct me. It's section 44807 exemption is the over 55 pounds. Also, you get relief from 137 because of the unmanned side. And then again, your 137 certificate is the actual exemptions you'd have for that. And then if you're a manned pilot, you would get a UAS rating or just your remote pilot certificate. And then that's it for the FAA rules. And then you would just look at your state local regulations as far as the chemical application licensing that'll be required.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other part to that, Andy, sorry, Joy, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Oh, I was going to see if Kelly maybe wanted to add anything.
Great.
What was the other part? I'm sorry.
Sure. So just also, Andy, I don't know if you know this about us already, but we also offer a full FAA consulting package. So if you want, some customers do the paperwork and the petitions and the exemption processing itself on their own, totally fine. It's a service that we offer to take all that stuff off your plate. Obviously, we've been doing this for years and years and years. And folks like Joy and Kelly on our team really know it like the back of their hand. It's stuff they deal with all day. So these weird CFRs and all the strange rules that come out that sometimes for us feels like Greek, to them is like, yeah, duh, you know. So anyway, that's an option. The service is $2,000 if the aircraft is under 55 pounds. It's $2,350 if the aircraft is over 55 pounds. So just to let you know. Cool. Kelly, anything else you wanted to add to that? She's muted. Let's see. I'm going to unmute her. Let's see what happens. Kelly, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. Anything you want to add to that?
Okay. You had me muted. I couldn't unmute myself.
Uh-oh.
For Andy, both of the under 55 pounds and over 55 pounds, they are both exemptions. The under 55 pounds is a 107 exemption because that is not one of the parts that are waiverable under 107. So you need an exemption under 55 and over 55. And that's for the under 55 is the dispensing of hazardous chemicals. That's 107.36 exemption. Now, the over 55, as far as your pilot's license, you only need to have a remote pilot's license for both, under 55 and over 55. The FAA is not requiring that you have a manned pilot license for over 55, as long as you have your remote pilot certificate. Now, if you already have a manned certificate and you are current in the current manned aircraft that you currently fly, they will accept that also. But the only thing at a minimum that you need for under 55 and over 55 is your remote pilot certificate under Part 107.
Awesome.
Because we make the safety case for that in the petition that's an equivalent level of safety.
Great. Cool. Thanks, Kelly. And I fixed that thing, by the way, so you guys can mute and unmute yourselves. To all of our attendees, we are clearly still becoming experts in the Zoom world. So I'm sure like many of you in your chops might be. All right, so it looks like those are the only questions that we have so far from the Q&A. Again, you know, if there's some things that you'd like to have more of a dialogue with us, the other thing that you can do is you can raise your hand. If you write, there's a three little dots by your name, and you can click on that and actually do raise hand. If you want to do that, then we can bring you over and you can be on video with us and talk to us and, you know, kind of run through some things if you'd like to. We could totally do that. Otherwise, if you're new, there's a lot of folks that have joined since we started. So welcome, welcome, welcome. At the very bottom of your screen, you'll see a little thing that says Q&A. You can click on that and you can type your questions to us and we'll answer them live, okay? So, and Joy, I know that we've got some folks that had submitted questions online before. So Tim just sent a question that we can cover, and then if we don't have any other questions live, we can go through some of those ones that people sent before. Cool. Oh, this is a great one. So Tim, welcome. I've got a question here from Tim who's on with us live. Tim, you're asking what brand of pumps and nozzles come standard on drones, and what types of nozzles Oh, and then what type of nozzle? Got it. Yeah, like a flat fan, etc. So Tim, generally what we're running is just a traditional DC diaphragm pump, okay? And that's a off-the-shelf pump. They vary between 3 liters a minute, 5 liters per minute. PSI is somewhere between 60 and 90. That's kind of your standard. They're just consumer off-the-shelf. That is that they're very inexpensive, and the benefit is that we can still control them fully automated through the autopilot and the mission planning. On the nozzles, there's 3 different nozzle options, and that varies by drone. The most common one, depending on your application, what your label requires, is AI 11001. Actually, it's not the AI. That's coming. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say that. It's a 11001, okay? It's like a medium coarse nozzle, so good and effective at mitigating drift. If that's important for you, you can also go with the smaller. We have some 80-005s, super, super fine nozzle. So, if you have an application where coverage is more key than drift mitigation, like a fungicide or an insecticide, that might be more of an appropriate nozzle. Good question. So on our older models, we used all hollow cone. So that was just, essentially on any of the aircraft that you see that have the boom, like our carbon fiber built aircraft, it's kind of our former generation. Those aircraft all have booms. And those were all hollow cone nozzles. Our new aircraft are using a combination of hollow cone and flat fan, depending on the placement of the nozzle. That just gives us a more consistent application, like just your actual spray quality is more consistent that way. And yeah, good question. I'm going to go ahead.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I do want to mention something about the pumps.
Yeah, go for it, Simon.
The pumps on some of our newer models, like the G200 and the M6X2, they are still diaphragm-style pumps, but they're actually brushless pumps. So they're not regular DC pumps, but what that means is that they're a lot smaller and a lot lighter for the same type of output of a standard DC pump. And another benefit is that they use a lot less power consumption. So you get longer flight time too, along with the higher output. And that's why some of our newest models are equipped with 2 pumps, so that you have a much higher output rate, and the weight of the pumps and the power usage is actually pretty close to what a DC pump of a lower output would be. So that's kind of a new feature on some of our models. The G200 and the M6e models all have brushless pumps. And they also last a lot longer.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Really great. I'm glad that you added that. Thank you. Joy, why don't we jump into some of the questions that were submitted before our webinar?
Sure, we can do that. I'm off mute. Okay, good. Okay, so we've got, I'm going to try to read these and not miss any parts of it. Okay, so we've got another FAA question that was really similar to what we already talked about which exemptions that are needed. And I also, in the comment, or I'm sorry, in the question answered, I also put a link to our FAA webinar so that people can go back and refer to that on other kind of spraying drone regulations. And then we've got 2 other questions here that kind of go together. Let's see. Okay, I'll just read it like this. Using drones to seed cover crops, especially multi-species cover crops, 9+ species with seeds of different weights. Is this being perfected? Can a drone go back and get another load by itself? Can the drone fly automatic patterns without a human at the controls for the whole flight? And then, or if a human would need to start and stop it. And if not now, will this be developed in the next 2 to 3 years?
I'll answer some of that if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Simon. That's an awesome question, or a series of questions.
Yeah,
Right?
so as far as using drones to seed cover crops, absolutely. That's something that we're we already offer on our M8e Pro models with the seed spreader option. The way that the seed spreader is designed, different size seeds or different size granules don't really seem to be an issue. We have a lot of customers using multiple size granules and species within the spreader, and it works really well. There is a limit to how big it can be, and that's listed on our website under our specifications. But as long as it's within the range specified for the granule spreader, it's not a problem. Can the drone go back and get another load by itself? That's a really good question. So right now, the drone automatically returns home and lands automatically when whenever a fail-safe event is reached, such as a low battery, a loss of signal, low chemical. There's a lot of different things that will cause the drone to come back and land automatically from the place at which it took off. As far as reloading the aircraft autonomously, it's not available right now. That is something that we're actually looking into. We really love the idea of having a truly autonomous farming operation, to where the loading, the flying, the battery recharging, and everything is 100% autonomous with no human input whatsoever. That's kind of the ultimate goal with drone spraying. Right now, that's not quite there yet. I'm sure that we'll start to see automatic loading systems soon. But right now, a human has to swap out the batteries, put the batteries on charge, and reload the tank as well. That was the last question here. Can the drone fly automatic patterns in good weather without a human at the controls for the whole flight? Of course. Our drones are 100% autonomous from takeoff to landing. And they can actually fly in even bad weather. We've tested our drones in some pretty extreme conditions, and they do quite well. The reality is you're always limited by your actual product application as far as weather, not the drone's performance. Usually wind is much more of a concern with drift rather than the drone actually operating safely. But absolutely, so our latest flight controller, like on our G200 and our M6e X2, it is 100% autonomous. It will take off automatically. It will climb to a designated altitude automatically. It will fly to the first point in your mission automatically. It will fly the mission automatically. It will follow terrain automatically. It will avoid any obstacles. It will return home automatically, and it will land and disarm. So the process is getting very close to being 100% autonomous. Once the option is out there to refill the drone automatically and swap out batteries and charge batteries, we're almost there for a fully autonomous system. Okay.
Awesome.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.
That's awesome.
Joy, why don't we jump over to Elon's question here? Oh, also, wait, before that, to everyone joining us, Simon just posted an awesome blog video last night of our new G200. So speaking of like being able to watch how the whole system is automated and autonomous, you can watch that video. It's Simon, what's it called again? It's the newest one on our YouTube page.
Hands-on with hands-on with the M6e Pro G200. It's going to be the latest video in our YouTube page. You'll find it there. We can put a link later to that YouTube page, but if you search HSE-UAV on YouTube, you'll find it. It's going to be the last one posted. And that's a great introduction to that drone, because it just shows how simple it is to actually use. I mean, I literally go step by step from unloading it, putting it together, to loading a flight plan and flying it, landing it. It shows the whole process and how autonomous it actually is. So if you're interested in seeing, how the drone actually operates out in the field, you gotta go see that video.
Nice. All right, awesome. Joy, can we jump into, I think we had a question from Elon, is that right?
Yeah, I typed in an answer there for Elon's. We've got two of them in there. Well, I was asking where he's located and let him know that our clients and dealers are part of HSE's pilot network. So if he wanted to email me like a request for a proposal or scope of work, what do you want sprayed, the size of fields, those kind of details, and we can look at getting him connected with one of our clients.
Great. Cool. This is a question from another Brian. Hey, Brian with a Y. Great to have you on here. We got to stick together. All right. So it says, are you seeing a lot of interest in the utility right-of-way industry? And if so, are there any specific regulations that should be highlighted for that use? Really good question. And yes, we do see a lot of interest from utilities and end service providers managing the rights of way for utilities. Same with rail. You can think of pretty much any kind of utility out there. Further, on the non-spraying side, we even have a method of line stringing with a separate drone that we have. So utilities are looking at a lot of different aspects of being able to use drones. So as far as the regulations go, utilities are in a pretty good place in rural areas especially, right? Areas that you don't have a lot of population around. The FAA is generally going to be a lot more considerate, if you will, of those kinds of situations where you're out in rural areas away from people, not flying over houses. And let me think of what else to say about that. There's also, I don't know, and Joy, you might be able to answer this better. There's a bit of a process that's easier for public entities because there's a trust that the FAA has, and public entities are able to certify themselves in capacities that normal civilians or consumers aren't. So it is a demand. There's a big industry out there for it, especially considering, I'm thinking about transmission lines that are near my house that, roll over this rough terrain with forests on both sides of it, and being able to get up and down with that with an ATV or a traditional ground rig would be tough. So I think that there's a really good use for it. Joy, anything or Kelly that you guys would want to add in the regulatory aspect of Brian's question?
Go ahead.
There's really no additional regulatory aspects to that. What is done in the petition for exemption is you have to be able to show that it's in the public interest. That's one of the requirements in the exemption under 11.81 that you have to show in your petition. That's where that wording and everything goes into that. We make the case for that when we put in the petitions. I've got 3 clients right now that I have for that very thing. Right-of-ways, watershed operations along ditches, noxious weed control, vegetation control. Basically, it's all lumped under agricultural operations and forestry preservation. So there's no particular regulation that goes along with that other than the requirements of the 137 that you have to get with either your under 55 exemption or your over 55 exemption.
Yeah, and then just to add to that on the public side, so any public agencies, they get the same thing. They get COAs, certificates of approval. I know right now it's a really big thing with COVID-19. Public entities can get emergency COAs to be SGIs approvals, and Kelly knows the specific ones, to be able to spray in an emergency basis for public health in the situation right now. But any operations that already have their exemptions and their 137 certificate for commercial are also able to do it right now, and could work with their local air traffic control and FSDOs to get airspace approvals, to be able to spray right now too. So that's pretty
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Joy. Thanks, Kelly.
Definitely.
Let's see, moving into, and you guys, we've got about 15 minutes left of our webinar today. So remember, if you have questions that we haven't answered, if you're curious about other industries that are using drones or other applications that spraying drones are part of, if you're looking to start a business or bring drones into your business, make sure to get those questions submitted if you want us to answer them live. Otherwise, if you submitted it already ahead of time by the registration form, we'll have all those questions live when we post this on YouTube. Let's see here. Next question comes from Tim. And Tim says, how is the efficacy of spraying fungicides with drones since they tend to need a higher carrier? Yeah, so Tim, really good question. So, you know, if you look at a reduction in chemical itself, right, in liquid, you can bring that equation down to fit in the tank of whatever aircraft you have, okay? So in certain labels, you've got to always follow the label, right? That's just period, period, period. Some countries don't have the same kind of rules that we have here in the States, but the efficacy of fungicides is actually pretty awesome. So if you look at the physics of spraying with the drone itself, some great benefits. We've got clients that spray things like sugarcane, banana plantations, melons, right? Any kind of vining crop is great as well with the drone, because that downward prop wash really helps to get that fungicide down off the actual nozzles itself and into the canopy of whatever you're spraying. So efficacy wise, and we talked about this on one of our other webinars, but in chemical company testing, one of the things that we did was looking at recovery rates. And recovery rates are the difference between how much chemical leaves the nozzle versus how much is captured on your target. And in testing that we did, this was years ago actually, so it might be even better now, I don't know. But in testing that we did, we were seeing recovery rates in the 90 percentile, which is freaking awesome. So that basically means that 90% of what left the nozzle actually is captured on the target, versus a lot of kind of industry standards from aerial applications are in the 60 to 70%. So, you know, I think when it comes to the efficacy of it, you know, drones are a really great solution, especially, and you didn't mention what you're looking to apply, you know, like what your crop is, but if you think about places that aren't large enough to warrant hiring a manned aviator, right? Or maybe the crop is just the nature of the crop is too difficult to get to with the ground rig, like sugarcane or banana plantations. I think a drone would be a great use for that. All right, on to the next one. Hope that helps to fully answer your question also, Tim. Okay, going on to Christian. So Christian's saying, considering a well use of batteries, we could spec certain numbers of charges as a valid life for the battery. Yeah. Okay, and then how many of those could we have? Also, I understand you have some units that will work in bad weather conditions. That can be done with small rains. Yeah. All right, Christian, so great question. So battery life is important, of course. It's just like our cell phones, you know, tablets or other battery operated device. Over time, it wears out, which means that slowly over time, you get less and less and less flight time with that battery. Depending on the type of battery, but more importantly, depending on how you take care of the battery, like battery maintenance, will really impact how long you can use those batteries. We call them cycles. And typically we see cycles somewhere between 250 and 350 cycles. So think about a cycle as the time that I charge it and I use it, one cycle. Things that really help extend the battery's life are having multiple batteries. It sounds kind of strange, but the more time you can have a battery rest between charging and flying, the better that is for your battery. So if you only have 4 batteries and you charge and fly them, charge and fly them, charge and fly them all day, you might only get 250 cycles. However, if you've got 8 batteries and you can give a little bit of a break between those charges and flights, you're going to get closer to 350, maybe more. When we look at operational costs or running costs for a drone, that's one of the most expensive factors. You know, you don't have oil changes, you don't have tune-ups, you don't have engine rehauls or rebuilds, you're not paying for gasoline. You know, the maintenance is almost non-existent with these aircraft. However, batteries are your most expensive cost of replacement. So you're about 350, 400, or 250 to 350 cycles. Simon, I know that on our operating procedures, you know, we've got a pretty strict battery handling kind of process, and we have a lot of batteries. How long did we have our last set of demo batteries before we cycled those out? Do you remember?
Quite a few years. It must have been at least, we didn't keep a very accurate log on some of the batteries, but had well over 350 cycles on them. and we're still operating quite well, but they did diminish in capacity a little bit. We were seeing like 90% of the original rated capacity, but what we found, and definitely something that we learned from experience, is, like Brian said, people are surprised when I mention that the batteries are really almost the only maintenance item on the drone. You really have to maintain the batteries correctly, and the biggest thing that will hurt a battery and reduce the lifespan of the battery is storing it incorrectly. And the batteries have a very specific window of time that they can be stored for fully charged. If you store them fully charged for too long, it will damage the battery. So a lot of the mentality in the world for batteries is, I must store them fully charged, and that's the worst thing you can do on a lithium battery. By the way, that goes for any lithium battery technology, including cell phones, laptops, etc., not just drones. The good thing is modern batteries like our G200 battery and the M6e batteries actually have built-in safeguards to prevent the battery from being stored fully charged for longer than it can. And specifically on the G200, the battery management is really incredible. It's got Wi-Fi built into the battery. It will communicate with the ground station. It tells you just about everything you can imagine about the battery, any faults that have ever happened. So it logs temperature, it logs cycle counts, it logs the charges, it logs any other faults, and it will automatically balance and store and discharge the battery over time to prevent it from being damaged by being fully charged for too long. So they've come a long, long way from what it used to be, where that was completely on the user. Now it's not so much of a concern anymore because the battery takes care of it for you.
Awesome. All right, cool. Thanks, Simon. On to Afila, and I might pronounce your name wrong. I'm sorry about that. So on to Afila's question. They say, hi, if the drone falls into water, like on a rice cultivation, can it be recovered without damage? And the answer is yes, with a little asterisk after my answer, okay? So the fuselage of like the M6e X2 and the G200 aircraft is actually sealed. So the fuselage, where the flight controller, all of the main operating components of the aircraft that are sensitive to water, is sealed. And the design is specifically so that if they're submerged, you don't have a total loss. However, you likely will have problems with the battery that was on board, because the battery is outside of that sealed air environment and it's just connected. So you might ruin a battery if that happens, okay, which would require that you replace that battery. So it's, we don't suggest that the aircraft ever be submerged on purpose, although there is a really neat YouTube video that we were displaying that level of water sealing that's on our YouTube. And I think it's called M6e Water Launch, and we can throw.
I just posted the link to his answer.
Awesome. Nice, thanks, Joy.
So you guys can
watch
see
that
it.
video, and it shows the M6e actually launching from a pond, and it's great. We designed it, one, because a lot of customers globally are spraying in wetland areas, right? Whether it be in rice paddies or also to control invasive aquatic species like around marshes or wetlands. So we wanted that ability, but we also know for all of our customers that are not spraying near waterways, it's also really helpful to be able to spray off the aircraft and decontaminate it, right? So you can rinse the whole drone down. So there's some other benefits to that as well. Good question.
One thing I want to mention about that.
Yeah, go for it.
Like you said, the aircraft can be, wet and not damaged, but one thing that you really do want to do after if it's been submerged, you really need to get the aircraft dry as soon as possible, because if you do leave it damp, of course, you risk corrosion issues on all the screws and the motors. Specifically, the bearings in the motors can get damaged if they have a lot of water in them. So what I always suggest to my customers and people that we train to fly the drones is, if the motors and the drone gets wet, you always need to dry it off afterwards. And the best thing to do so, like especially on the motors that have a lot of little intricate parts, like a compressed air or a can of compressed air is like the best thing. You can get all that water out and it'll last a really long time without having issues further down the road with corrosion.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Simon. All right. So we don't have any other open questions right now on the Q&A. So we got about 5 minutes left. So if you have anything that's just burning and you just, I want to get this question answered, just go ahead and send it in on the Q&A, okay? Or if you raise your hand, we'll call on you and we can bring you on with video and all that stuff. You know, I think some other things that I'm just looking at what we see is coming in the future, and I can kind of share with that, you know, if folks are still writing their questions or whatever. But, you know, we're definitely seeing globally a continued trend of spraying. So between all, and we're seeing a big expansion in spraying outside of the field. So that could be spraying roofs for cleaning. We had a blog post about that a couple days ago. You know, spraying solar panels, all sorts of different spraying applications that are out there that aren't just specifically on the field. We talked about like agriculture, aquatic species management, vector control, mosquito control, pest control. So there's a lot of different aspects that spraying drones are also kind of bleeding into, if you will. And that's pretty exciting. We also see that some of the trends that are happening and we're working on pretty fiercely right now is, you know, battery cell technology limits how much capacity we can usefully have on a drone. We could produce a drone that lifts 200 liters or 200 pounds for that matter tomorrow, but with the current battery cell technology, you'd only be able to fly it for like 2 minutes. It's not helpful. So right now the game is really a couple things. One, it's having multiple aircraft that you can actually send out to do the work of one, you know, 50-liter drone, for example, but have all of those aircraft do the work for you. Maybe it's 5, 10-liter drones instead. Also, the FAA and most regulatory bodies in the world favor lighter, smaller spraying aircraft. So in our case, under 55 pounds internationally, generally under 25 kilos, you know, so there's some benefits to the regulatory environment as well for customers buying multiple smaller drones and having a fleet of them spraying. I also personally feel like that there's some comfort that I would have as an operator of having redundancy. So if I have one aircraft that, you know, that I'm keen on and it's part of my business model, I've got to get this work done and I have a problem with that aircraft. Hopefully you don't, of course, but always, you know, plan for the worst and expect the best. In that case, you know, you might be out and hopefully have spare parts and, you know, all that good stuff. But, you know, having a second aircraft or a third aircraft is really valuable because you can lean on and you know, pull those into service if you need to. So that's something we're seeing more and more and more of. We're also seeing regulatory environments open up more for what they call swarm technology. That's like one operator or one system being able to control multiple drones at the same time. So we're seeing the regulatory environment open up for that, which is awesome. We got some new questions here. All right, let's see. So,
hey, Brian, I wanted to add something too, that has just kind of come up recently and opened up spraying also. We have a client that we're going to start to work with on the FAA side, that they are looking to spray disinfectant. They do a lot of venues like the live concerts and, you know, outdoor areas, but while they're waiting for their FAA exemptions, they're actually going to be spraying indoors in big old warehouses for disinfectant. And because it's indoor, there are not any FAA regulations for it. So you would just go with the same chemical application spraying licensing you need for, you know, your state or regulatory. But other than that, there's not any FAA exemptions to spray inside. So that's kind of a little extra thing as far as right now with the disinfecting. That's kind of getting a little bigger.
Nice. Next question comes from Reynolds. Hey, Reynolds. So Reynolds is asking, can you spray with more than one drone at a time, like in conjunction, to increase acres per hour? Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So the standard approval requires that you have one operator per drone, so that I'm flying drone number 1 and you're flying drone number 2. However, if you apply for a special exemption to be able to fly more than one aircraft, that is possible. And it's probably the most effective way to increase your acreage per hour. I think Simon mentioned earlier, typically, again, depending on application rate, that's key. Also, that dictates the nozzles that you use. Generally, we see 20-ish to 35-ish acres in an hour with one aircraft. So yeah, if you've got 2 or 3 aircraft and have the staff to do it or the special approvals and the technology to swarm, then you could definitely have, this aircraft far out west and then that aircraft here and that aircraft there. Can also split flight plans between aircraft. So you can take one large field and split this flight plan into flight plan A and that flight plan into flight plan B and have both of them go do the work. So good question, Reynolds. All right, so that, you guys, wraps up our time together today. Dave's got a question. I feel like we should answer it. Let's answer it real quick. Before we do, I just want to let everyone know that's watching, we are going to send out a link to this entire webinar today, so you can reference back. If you got disconnected or anything, you can jump on and catch up on anything that you missed. Also, our earlier webinars on FAA spraying is on our YouTube page, along with, let's see, Simon, we did one with Dr. Dan Martin Dan Martin, he's a PhD with the USDA ARS. We did one with him. And then we did also, all the days are running together. I don't know, but we've got a lot of them in there on YouTube. And Joy's gonna send out a link to everyone on with us now, or if you weren't able to join, you'll get a link with the video link as well. Last question here says, how difficult is it to get exemptions that you've referenced? And Joy, I'll let you and Kelly grab that one. And yes, all right, cool. Oh, Joy, you're muted. Kelly, you're muted.
There we are. Welcome.
Oh,
Sorry, I was
okay.
copying this link over for YouTube. Okay, so
The exemptions are not difficult. I've gotten many exemptions through over 55 and under 55. They're not difficult if you know what you're doing. But I will tell you that the FAA, if you try doing it yourself, you're probably going to get a lot of requests for information. Unless you know exactly what to send them, because there are limitations and conditions, especially with the over 55, that come down that you have to know how to apply for relief from. Simple example, when you're flying over 55 pounds, there's a condition and limitation that comes down that you have to be at least 500 feet from vehicles, vessels, or structures unless you have permission from somebody to be within the 500 feet. Normally, that's not a problem with structures and vessels because you're not going to be close to any vessels when you're flying for crop spraying. However, it does become problematic if you're flying within 500 feet of a road, because obviously it's not reasonable to have to stop every single vehicle that's traveling that road and ask permission if you can be within 500 feet of them. So you have to provide everything that the FAA is looking for to mitigate that, for them to even grant you relief from that. So there's just some nuances that we as the experts kind of know that somebody trying to do this themselves do not know. So if you are trying to do this yourself, be prepared to get a lot of requests for further information from the FAA. But they are not difficult to get through, and the time frames are really actually, even with everybody working from home. I submitted an exemption 2 weeks ago. Last week, the FAA already contacted me for some verification of some stuff, so I know they're working on them as quickly as they get them.
Excellent, cool. Thanks, Kelly. So we just submitted a quick little survey to everyone online. If you can answer, we'd love your feedback. And we'll hang out for another couple moments here so you guys can get your response there. Wow, look how white my face got when the sun came up.
Hey, you guys, I was going to add something on those exemptions too, as far as processing time. Like the last few we've gotten through have been less than 90 days, averaging between 60 and 90 days as far as the paperwork exemptions. And then your 137 certificate process kind of depends on your local FSDO, if they have a wait list, or, you know, if they're busy, or, you know, kind of like their caseload. So that's usually a little longer process than the actual exemptions getting approved. So we can start those, though. Once Kelly submits your exemption and the FAA receives it, we can actually start your certificate process, because they don't actually need the exemption approved until towards phase 4 or 5 of the certificate process.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joy. Okay, great. Joy, is that a drone behind you? I'm just looking.
It is.
Nice.
Would you like to see it?
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
I love
I think
it.
Simon had this one. He was out in the field with this one yesterday. This is a G200 that you guys were talking about. Put the link in there.
Cool. Okay,
Yeah.
great. The other thing that we'll do is we'll send out an inquiry. We really want to find, you know, we want these webinars to be valuable and helpful for you guys. And, you know, and we know that drones are new to so many people, and we've been doing this for more than 10 years. So it's like, you know, we've got a pretty good kind of understanding of it, but we want these to be valuable for you. So if there's topics or subjects of like, man, I really want to know more about, you know, the data that's out there for spraying drones, or I really want to know more about industries, or I want to know more about how to start a business, you know, about drones. You know, any of those things that you've got, if you've got suggestions, we've got experts in kind of every little sector of the drone world. I know that one of the things that I'd like to do is have a webinar about leasing and financing and rentals. There's some awesome perks to that as far as cash flow for businesses. That's one of the webinars we're looking at putting on. Probably have another one with Dan Martin at the USDA, so we can get some more questions about what the world of the research side of drone technology is doing. So anyway, thanks for being here, and we just so appreciate you joining us, and keep an eye out for another email with the video link. Thanks for hanging out with us a little longer so we could get that last question answered. And yeah, on behalf of the whole team, thanks.
Thanks, you guys. Take care. Stay
We'll see you next
safe.
time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.